Greetings, everyone. This is Wesahana Pearson recording for Black Asia Magazine. And I'm in the airport again, and I'm giving my final thoughts on a trip I just wrapped up. I just went to between Hong Kong, Shenzhen, China, and Guangzhou, China, an area called the Pearl River Delta. So, took a few notes about being here. I used to live in Shenzhen for about 2.5 years. I used to visit Hong Kong frequently. I lived in Hong Kong for about 6 months. So, first thing, people who live in Hong Kong are not civilized. Most people here. There's no way around it. It's just true. It's the majority of people here. What can I say? I first landed in Hong Kong, and I got into a taxi. And just like in most airports, the taxis are all lined up outside. And the first taxi will pick up a fare and drive off. And then the second taxi will just move up into the first position. They'll all move up. So I actually got into the second taxi. And I gave the guy my address where I was going. And so he looked at it and he said, okay, you think that's... And the first position was vacant, so the security woman, she banged on the hood of his car. Boom, 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 move up. And it reminded me of the way a prison guard would talk to an inmate, just with no respect. And then the driver, I really thought he became incensed. I thought he was gonna jump out of the taxi and assault the woman. That's how people talk to each other here on a daily basis. So next episode, I was looking for a place to stay. I didn't have a place booked because I was only gonna be in Hong Kong for one night. So I was looking around Nathan Road. There are a lot of very cheap guest houses. And I went into one guest house, and just people around that whole area, especially people in the service sector, they have no clue about how to talk to someone with courtesy and a civil tone. I walked into one guest house, and I said, do you have any vacant rooms? No, we're fully booked. Okay. So I went down the hall a little bit, and I was starting to knock on one door, and the guy from the first guest house comes out, older gentleman. Booking. It's like, why the fuck are you shouting at me? You're standing 5 feet in front of me. And so from there, what I started doing was, anytime someone walked up to me and spoke to me, I just started speaking Mandarin to them. I started speaking to them, responding to them in Mandarin. And that actually helped tremendously. It opened up a lot of doors. That put people here into a comfort zone, because in their minds, it's like English is just too hard. We can't do it. It can't fit into our brains. If you speak to people in English, expect for communication to break down. And then when communication breaks down, expect for them to break down and start grunting and becoming furious and just becoming very emotional. I noticed that too many times, but then when I spoke to people in Mandarin, even if they responded to me in English, it put them in that comfort zone to say, okay, now I'm dealing on my own terms. I can do this and not look ridiculous. And people are like, people appreciated that so much. 99.9% of the time. I went into a restaurant, another episode, and the guy comes up and says, what would you like, sir? And I told him in Mandarin. I forgot exactly what I said, but I said, what's this and how much is this? And he warmed right up to me. And he told me, and he brought my food out. And the time I was eating, I was watching it. They have excellent food in Hong Kong. I had a really great beef brisket. And I was watching the waiter the whole time, and he just seemed like he was a really good waiter who knew what he was doing. And I think also me speaking to him in a language he can understand, ideally you should use Cantonese, because that's their first language. But everyone here can do Mandarin. Because I put him in that comfort zone, I was watching him. He was actually a fantastic waiter. He was very officious. He was watching the whole restaurant. He was watching me, not because he thought there was a problem, but to see, does this guy need anything else? So I got up from eating, and I got up to pay my bill, and I said in English, sir, can you tell me your name? I really want to maybe recommend this restaurant or maybe come here again. He said, what? I said, your name, again in English. And he said, ah. And so I went to pay the bill and I talked to the guy who was the host of the restaurant. And he said, I said, what's wrong with that guy? He said, yeah, he didn't understand what you were saying. I think most people in the world can feel that question in English, what's your name? But it just made the guy revert right back to type and start acting like a caveman again. What else? So,
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Oh Lord.
This is the final.
Okay, back to business. So, I got back from Hong Kong about 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks and 3 days ago. And it has basically taken me that long to recover from the whole trip. The trip wiped me out and made me feel completely exhausted. Mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Going into China, doing Hong Kong, and then Shenzhen, and then Guangzhou, and then back the same way, and then coming back to Taiwan. It made me so tired. And I could speculate as to why, but I'm not exactly sure why. So, what did I do? I already went over my impression of Cantonese people and just how rude they can be in general. I mean, there's an excellent party scene and party culture there. And like I said, unless you have money, it's not really that enjoyable, I thought. What else would I say? So, let's talk about what happened. I was in Hong Kong for one night, and I went to the consulate. I wanted to get a visa to go to China. And everyone who wanted to go to China just got supremely fucked with, especially Americans and also British people. They wanted to find every single excuse that they being the people who worked at the consulate, any single reason, anything they could use to rule you out. Anything that they could tell you, you didn't do this, you don't have this, you don't have this document, you don't have that document. Anything they could say to make you have to take a longer time in getting your visa. So I filled out the forms. Then they said, well, you need to go print your plane ticket to show us that when you're coming in and when you're leaving, which they don't actually need. But again, it was just something that they could say to make things a little bit less pleasant for you and make things a little bit rougher for you getting your visa and getting your paperwork sorted out. And when you print there at their office, they have a print station, but you have to pay for it. And you have to pay for it using what's known as an octopus card. An octopus card is like a subway or a metro pass that they use for the underground or the subway in Hong Kong. You can also use it at convenience stores to buy things. You can put money on it, load money on, take money off, pay for things. If you don't have an octopus card, which you probably wouldn't, you cannot print there in the embassy. So there was one other American guy. He had been there for about 4 hours already, trying to get his paperwork expedited, which is unheard of. And he was letting everyone use his octopus card. Shout out to David Weeks. He was just nice enough to let everyone use his octopus card. And that's the only way a lot of people could print anything. Other thing about Hong Kong that's interesting. Hold on one second. Now, most places in the world, when you go there, they put a stamp in your passport, or they give you a visa, which is a sticker that sticks into your passport on one of the pages. When you go to Hong Kong, they give you this. They put this arrival card in your passport, just like that. It's not stuck to any page. It's not a stamp. It's not stapled in there. They do that because they want it to fall out. And then any other business you have to do in Hong Kong, first thing they'll say is, where is your arrival card? Where is that? Where is that little tiny square of paper that we gave you when you first landed here? And you're going to look And you're gonna say, right, you did give me that. Oh shit. I went to use the bathroom and it fell out of my pocket and I don't have it. So now you have to go about the arduous and tedious process of getting another one. So the point is, you'll have to stay in Hong Kong longer and spend more money there. Which just, I think, is the whole thing. I think this is just really sleazy. So I got all my documents printed out. I was in the consulate for about 3 hours. You have to print up your flight ticket. You have to show them the hotel where you'll be staying, the receipt, the confirmation, all of this. Things that I've never heard asked before anywhere else. You have to show them your residence permit from me living in Taiwan or wherever else you live. Anything to prolong the experience. And we all agreed to come up with a new hashtag called That Trump Shit, because it's most likely due to the trade war with Donald Trump that's being waged right now that's giving Americans a harder time in traveling to a lot of different countries. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right. So after I went through all the rigmarole of getting my paperwork settled, the woman says, actually, you want a next day visa, but we might not be able to give that to you. I'm just letting you know that. She told me that. And she told me the price. Now, I looked online right before going to Hong Kong, and I looked up the price for Americans wanting a next day visa going to China from Hong Kong, and it said it would be about $140 US. The price she quoted me was just under $300 US. So it had changed. The information that I looked up was no more than 1 month old, so within 1 month the price had become double. So I said, and I got the impression that she wasn't, the way it was going to turn out, I would probably come back the next day, $300 lighter in the pocket, and she was going to say, well, something happened, you didn't have this, so they couldn't do that, and now we don't have your visa, so you're out $300. I told her, give me my fucking passport back. I'm not dealing with that. I'll take my chances in the port. So the next day, I went to Shenzhen. There's you can walk. The last stop in Hong Kong is called Lo Wu, and then you can walk across the border into China. So right at the halfway point, they'll allow you to go upstairs and buy a China visa. It costs 956 Chinese yuan, which is the highest price, but it's not outrageous. It's a 5-day visa, and you can go only in Shenzhen. So I did that, and it was no problem. The Chinese authorities were professionals. Not overly polite, but they were doing their job and they weren't being dicks. Yeah. The woman that I was dealing with at the Hong Kong consulate, when I told her to give me back my passport, she was livid. She was steaming mad. And I don't know why. It gave me the impression that when my passport got rejected, it would have inevitably been rejected, and maybe she would have got a cut from that. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but she just seemed to take it personally. The fact that I was like, nah, I would rather not do this. It's too expensive. It's just been too much time. So, went to Shenzhen. Bought a SIM card in Shenzhen. And everything you do in China, if you fart, they need to take your picture. They need to look at your ID. Anything you buy a train ticket, you buy a SIM card, you pay for a hotel room. They need to catalog and categorize every single thing you do. Like the state, Big Brother, is really watching you at all times. So, bought a SIM card, tested it, used the internet and a couple of phone calls, it was fine. And then I got on the train to go to Guangzhou, which actually I wasn't supposed to do, but because the visa is only for Shenzhen. But I got on the train, got a train ticket, no problem. And I went to Guangzhou. Now, as soon as I got to Guangzhou, I'm not saying because, I don't know why. It might be because I was limited in the system to Shenzhen. But as soon as I got to Guangzhou, my SIM card stopped working. It just shut down completely. I had no phone calls, no text messages, no internet, and no one could explain to me why that was. Alright, so I got a hotel room in Guangzhou. It worked out pretty well. And Guangzhou has a huge African community. And they're centered in and around an area called Xiaobei Lu, or Little North Road. And I used to hang out there a lot when I was younger, about maybe 10 or 12 years ago, 2005, 2006. I had quite a few friends over there. Most of the people there, especially at that time, were all young men, late teens, early 20s, mostly from West Africa, different parts of Africa, all over. A lot of Nigerians, Cameroonians, Ghanaians, Ethiopians. If you go there now, one of the things that astounded me in a very refreshing way is that this is one of the only places in Asia where you can see a lot of black women walking around. There's black women in Korea too. They like to go there as English teachers. They're Americans, but a lot of these women are young women from Africa. A lot of Somalian women, different parts of West Africa, and you see them in groups, and that was nice to see. When I was there in 2006 and 2007, being the fact that most of these people were young men, most of them did not have papers to be living there, you used to hear that these guys used to do stuff. Like, there were a lot of gang fights, a lot of drug dealing, just because living there and not having papers, you can't get a job. So people used to participate in underground economies a lot, which ran them into problems with the police. Even legitimate things like women making food from their country, local dishes, where you don't have a license or a permit. You're actually living here illegally. And they're being allowed to live confined to a few small areas illegally. And there are thousands of people like that, which worries me if you understand the way the American system, especially with regard to race, began to take shape in the 1700s and 1800s. Other things that you used to hear about these communities was maybe someone would get stabbed, or there was a pretty big incident, I think in 2006, where some West African guys wanted to trade money, like trade maybe yuan for US dollars with the Chinese trader. And they traded the money, and then when they got their money home, they realized it was all counterfeit. So they said, okay, they called the guy to come back. Like, yeah, we want to trade some more money with you. And the guy went. Like, why the hell would you go if you know that you just ripped these African guys off? He went, and the African guys took him up to the roof and dropped him down. Stuff like that you used to hear. You used to hear things like, there was, like, back then, prostitution was like convenience stores. So a guy would pay a woman to come back to his home for the night, and then when the woman got there, it was him and his 3 brothers in the apartment. And they say, yeah, just get comfortable. You ain't going nowhere till the day after tomorrow. So it created, even though the overwhelming majority of people there are traders, people who are legitimate, maybe not legitimate, maybe it's they don't have papers, but they're doing a safe, how would you say, a business that doesn't harm people, a business that brings a profit to them into the city. But the fact that there was this criminal element among them created a blight on their reputation. So I tried to make inroads with these people in Guangzhou, because I see all these Black American groups that are popping up, and I see these African communities that are popping up as well, and they're becoming totally marginalized. And I think that's something that we need to be mindful of or watchful of. Another thing that happened in Guangzhou, I went to Burger King. I was in Guangzhou for about 3 days. I went to Burger King, and it's about 5 p.m. They don't close until about 9, 10. The first thing the guy says when I get up to the counter is, we ran out of beef. We just ran out of beef. I'm like, I had no words for him. Like, how the fuck can you run out of beef in your Burger King? But these are things that will happen in China. Things that don't make any sense. I went back to Shenzhen on the train, because technically I was supposed to only be in Shenzhen, so I wanted to leave China through Shenzhen. And I went back to the same kiosk where I bought the SIM card, and I said, you know, what happened? I was in Guangzhou for 2.5 days, 3 days, and could not use the phone. Like, why not? And the explanation that the guy gave me was, well, we took your picture for the purchase, and your picture that we took doesn't look like your picture in the passport, which I thought was completely ridiculous. And I said, no, look, I want my money back. It was like 100 Chinese yuan. It wasn't like $15. It wasn't really that steep. But he's, giving me the whole sob story, and oh, if you go to Hong Kong, you can use a SIM card. If you go to Taiwan, you can use a SIM card. And the sign clearly says right above us, only in China can you use a SIM card. And I was just like, listen, you're going to give me my money back. And that's it. And it just seems like when you live in China, it's just a non-stop barrage of one problem after another. And these are problems where you have to sit down with each individual problem and focus all your energies and attention on that. And if you do that, then you can eliminate that problem. But then another one pops up. It's like whack-a-mole. And a lot of people like living in China, from what I've seen, because you feel so great and strong and empowered because you can sail through all these problems. You have the capacity and the ingenuity to deal with these things. But what ends up happening is you go through problems, you get complacent, and you stop being vigilant. And then more problems just rise up and you end up with all these problems. So living in China, for a lot of people I've seen, it's a headache. Went back to Hong Kong, stayed in Hong Kong for one night. And I stayed in Chungking Mansion. Now, when I was living in Shenzhen in 2006, 2007, I used to go across the border to Hong Kong all the time. And I used to hang out with one guy whose name was Prince. Prince was from Ghana. And Prince, he used to hang out. He used to go out drinking and having fun and chasing girls and things like that. And I was back in Hong Kong again in 2013, and I went to a club. And I saw this guy in the club, and I was like, Prince, is that you? It was him. And what he ended up telling me, we caught up a little bit, was that he had spent about 4 years in jail in Hong Kong for drugs. And what I'm starting to see in different Asian communities is them building a prison population off of young black men. So he got out, and he said, okay, I can't talk right now, because he was right back at it. He was doing business with the owners of this particular club. So 2 weeks ago, I'm in Hong Kong, and I'm in Chungking Mansion. And there's an African restaurant up on the second floor in Chungking. So I went there, talking to the owner of the restaurant, walking around. And as I'm coming out of the restaurant, there's this really rough-looking guy sitting there in front of the restaurant, and he was looking right at me. Now, in a lot of places, if someone's staring at you, it might be a confrontational thing. But in this environment, I think because there is a lot of violence around that area, there's a touristy part to it, but underneath the surface, it's problematic, let's say, living around there. Because of that fact, violence is the last thing on people's minds. If someone's looking at you, what you're going to be thinking is like, why is he looking at me? Does he want something? He's trying to ask me for something? You're going to be thinking everything else besides confrontation. So I looked at this guy, I just said, hey, what's up? And I looked at him closely, and I was like, Prince? Is that you, Prince? And I think he was looking at me because he probably recognized me from back in the day when we used to hang out. And he told me he just got out of jail again. And I could see that last time I saw him, he had also just gotten out, but it was something he just shook off. It's starting to catch up with him. And it's starting to wear him down and break him down. And seeing someone who was formerly a friend and who was a very strong, able-bodied man, and now seeing him, he's not much older than me. He's probably younger than me, and having been crippled by this system, that hurt to see. I didn't like seeing that at all. But he told me what he's doing right now. He's struggling, and he told me, because I'm here illegally, they're not allowing me to leave Hong Kong. So I'll see if I can catch up with that guy later. That's my story. Other than that, I came back to Taiwan. Just going back to work now. So, yeah. That's it. Cut.